Okay, thank you very much. Thank you all for being here today. Good morning to all of you. We're going to be talking about the New York State tourism efforts today, and we have the number of people who are joining us to make today's presentation. Ken Adams, who is the president of the Empire State Development Corporation, as you know. David Lubars, who is the chairman and the chief creative officer for BBD&O, which is the firm that has been working with the state on this. And we're also joined by Margaret Peggy Coleman, the president of the New York State Association of Conventions and Visitors Bureau. It's a piece of work that's been worked on for many, many months by ESDC and BBD&O, and we're excited to actually see it today. And I'll turn it over to Ken Adams at this point to give us some of the facts and figures on this effort. Ken?
Great. Thank you very much, Governor. Good morning to you, to everyone here. This is an exciting announcement for us to make. And in a moment, you all will hear from David Lubars of BBD&O about some of the specifics of this campaign. He's as the Governor pointed out, David's the chairman and chief creative officer at BBD&O. And Peggy will present the ads, and then Peggy will have some comments as well. And I look forward to this discussion. The governor wanted me to reflect a little bit this morning on the economic impact of tourism in New York State, and tourism quite clearly is big business for New York State. The governor knows that tourism is a critical economic engine for our state. In fact, tourism is now New York's fifth largest employer, if you consider all the jobs that are directly in tourism or related to tourism. Total tourism industry employment has risen to almost 500,000 jobs, 500,000 jobs. It's actually 482,000 jobs, according to the State Department of Labor. And overall tourism employment has reached a new high of about 700,000 jobs when you add in all the related jobs that are not so much direct but indirect. So it's a big number of New Yorkers employed in tourism. And among states, New York actually ranks third in the size of our tourism economy. We're sort of neck and neck with California and Florida. And we face marketing competition from those states, which is why this announcement today is particularly important, because this is an industry here in New York where clearly we have to make sure we're making investments and bringing on the talent, like David and his colleagues, to maintain a competitive position for New York State. New York State tourism is coming back in terms of just responding to the impact of the national recession. New York we've actually recovered in a very, very powerful way in this sector, and we are now hitting record numbers that exceed where we were prior to the recession. So this is a very important kind of economic recovery story for the state. In 2011, the state generated a new high of $53.8 billion in direct spending by visitors to New York. If your editors don't like decimal points, round it up to $54 billion. It's a staggering overall $87 billion in total, the direct and the indirect spending in New York, driven by tourism, by traveler and visitor spending. And you know, it's one of the most important sources, Governor, of tax revenue. Visitor spending generated almost $7 billion in state and local taxes last year in 2011. Now, in terms of this campaign, which David and others will share with you all this morning, this is a new multi-million-dollar advertising campaign in which we are working to revive the iconic I Love New York brand and campaign I think you're all familiar with, by having real individuals tell us what it is, real New Yorkers, tell us what it is that they love most about New York's 11 vacation regions. And we all know there's never a shortage of passion about New York, and now we're putting that passion right where it belongs, into the heart of New York and our tourism industry. So as the governor pointed out, Empire State Development has been working for the last several months with the advertising agency, really a global leader in advertising, BBD&O. And I should mention, Governor, that our work is coordinated there by Harvey Cohen, who's done a fantastic job. And the idea here, again, in the spirit of the governor likes to promote public-private partnerships, by going to private New Yorkers, individual citizens, to get them to speak out and tell us what they love about I Love New York, is how we get to that end. The total budget for this new campaign will be $5 million. which includes television and digital media. Specifically, up $2.3 million of that will be going to broadcast media and about $250,000 for internet and social media messaging. The funding campaign for this comes from the broader $50 million campaign passed by the legislature for the governor's New York Open for Business initiative earlier this year. The TV spots, which you will see today, are scheduled to begin airing immediately in major markets all across New York State, as well as in neighboring states and parts of Canada, and they're going to run for about the next 7 weeks. There's also, again, as the funding suggests, a very aggressive digital and social media campaign with Facebook and Twitter and other components. That's a big part of this. And I would just note to wrap this up that throughout his 17 months as governor, Governor Cuomo has accomplished some extraordinary achievements which have restored the confidence of New Yorkers in our state and the pride for and the reputation of New York on a national and international level. And this campaign just drives that message home to New Yorkers and beyond. After years of pulling back, the governor is committed to moving forward to support our tourism industry, which is so critical, as I think the data indicates, to the state's economic future. So thank you again, Governor, for charging ESD with this work and supporting our engaging of the firm. And I'll turn it over to David now to talk a little more specifically about the TV spots.
Well, thank you. I want to thank the Governor and Ken for, it's an honor and privilege for us to be part of this. BBDO has been in New York for well over 100 years. We're passionate about the state. And we love that we can play a small part in helping the tourism. Just a quick introduction. So New York State has the greatest, most iconic tourism icon ever in the world, the I Heart New York icon, as designed by the legendary Milton Glaser back in the 70s. So we thought we should use that because, you could not put a price or value on what it's worth. The problem with it, though, was that icon has been co-opted by literally the rest of the world. If you go to Russia, if you go to Spain, you see I Heart something. And it's lost its New York cachet. So our job, our assignment, ESD, and my team's assignment was to bring new cachet back to that logo and make it mean something important. So we've reintroduced and refreshed it, and I will show it to you in just a minute, basically by asking the public to sketch into that logo what they love about New York State. You can see some of the sketches now. You can see some celebrities, some of the things they've sketched. They've sketched these things, what they love about New York, and then it leads into the logo at the end. Now, that logo hasn't been used in more than 3 years. We've given it new life and energy to match the dynamism and diversity of this great state. And we believe it works across all the seasons and the 11 regions. It's not just an ad campaign, it's a platform to go forward with tourism, to really get people to appreciate us the way we know they should and will. And if Twitter is usually a good way to measure the early goings. The campaign hasn't launched yet, but it already has an 18% engagement rate where the norm is 5%. So once it launches, we hope to see that even increase more. So with that, we'll play 2 commercials.
Summer in New York State has something different for everyone to love. Discover what you love. Visit ilovenewyork.com to plan your summer trip now. Summer in New York State has something different for everyone to love. Discover what you love. Visit ilovenewyork.com to plan your summer trip now.
So with that, we'll push forward and the media will begin soon, and we're excited about this, and you'll see more of it to come.
Margaret?
Well, thank you, David, and thank you, Governor Cuomo, for inviting me to speak today and giving me the opportunity to be part of such a momentous occasion. I'm Peggy Coleman. I am the president of the New York State Association of Destination Marketing Organizations and a member of the New York State Hospitality and Tourism Association. I also have the pleasure of working closely with the New York State Tourism Advisory Council for the past few months. And I am honored to be here today, especially since our industry, the tourism industry, has been waiting for the state to sponsor a campaign of this size and quality. During my many years in the tourism industry, this is one of the most organized and powerful ad campaigns to promote New York State's many varied tourism destinations that I've seen. And to make these ads even more special, the new I Love New York campaign is also giving anyone who loves New York, anyone who has visited some of our many varied destinations, an opportunity to contribute to the campaign. As you just saw, New Yorkers, as well as our out-of-state visitors, will submit sketches depicting what they love about New York State, and then those selected drawings will replace the heart in the iconic brand. It's clear that our governor, Governor Cuomo, understands the positive economic impact that tourism has on our state. The tourism industry supports itself, and it drives revenue into our state. But the industry has been desperate and was in desperate need for a strong push from the state for a long time. This is a much needed and long awaited commitment to the tourism industry for the state, and it is truly a privilege to be here for the launch. I'm now pleased to introduce the Governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Margaret. Well, first, my point is congratulations. I applaud ESDC and Ken Adams and his whole team for a job well done. BBD&O, congratulations. It really is it's a special advertisement. It's a lot of energy, and I think it's great. Margaret, you and the infrastructure all across the state that has been working very hard to generate tourism. I'm glad that the state is now working in partnership with you. And as you heard, this is all about New York open for business. This is all about jobs, jobs, jobs. It's all about getting dollars and tax revenues in our state. And tourism is big business for the state of New York, period, especially at certain times of the year. Ken said it's about the 5th largest industry. 1 in 13 jobs in the state is benefited by tourism, 1 in 13 jobs. So it really is big business. It's an industry in the state that, frankly, the state government has not been aggressive enough in pursuing, in my opinion. Margaret's point, Peggy's point, is that many of the state's tourism bureaus and tourism activities across the state will say they haven't had the support from the state government itself. And this is a competition. States are competing for tourism dollars, especially at this time of year. And other states have been more aggressive in attracting and pursuing tourism dollars than New York State has. It was sort of the story we tell in this room day in and day out. The state government wasn't functioning the way it should. The state government had other issues that it was dealing with, and it wasn't aggressively, proactively partnering with the tourism community in running a campaign that made a difference at the end of the day. So, excuse me, in many ways, this is the state getting back into a business that was a very big business for the state of New York. The parallel with your advertisement is interesting to me. The reimagining of the I Love New York icon. This state created a tourism, the I Love New York icon, that created an entire industry. And it was back in the 70s that David mentioned. And we were leading the parade. And we were the first, and we were the best, and we were ahead of the curve. And somewhere along the way, we lost that. And in the case of the I Love New York icon, it's actually been borrowed, let's say, not to start a legal war, but it's been borrowed, if not appropriated, by other jurisdictions. And we, in some ways, lost the very brand that we had created. And what's interesting to me about these ads is reimagining the I Love New York icon. You still have the icon, but you have to bring it back to New York. You have to reimagine it. You have to re-energize it. You have to take possession of it again. And that, David, is in many ways what we're trying to do all across the board. Put the empire back in the Empire State. This at one time was the greatest state government in the United States, period. We led the way. And we've been going through the past year and a half of my administration. How do you bring that back? How do you bring competence back to state government? How do you make it work again? How do you bring the energy back to the state of New York? So there's a definite parallel. But well done. We're excited. You said it's going to start immediately. I'm excited about the campaign because I am very bullish on the product. As I tell my kids all the time, I have been literally in every state in the United States. I used to work in the federal government at one point for 8 years, and that was a great experience on a number of levels, but literally brought me to every state multiple times when I worked for the federal government. So I've seen everything else that is out there. There is no state that has anything over on the state of New York. And any worthwhile activity that you could do, my position is you can do it here in the state of New York. So whatever vacation activity you're thinking of, whatever you want to do, wherever you want to visit, whatever you want to see, you can do it right here in the state of New York. So I feel very good about the success of the campaign because I feel very good about the quality of the product. And the product is the greatest state in the nation, which is the state of New York. So congratulations to all of you. I know it was a lot of work. Thank you for the service, and the product speaks for itself. Any questions? Please feel free.
I know this is getting repeat with News 10. I know you were trying to bike, hike, and fish and all of that in New York. Why the delay in implementing smoke-free zones?
I'm sorry, the delay in the...
In implementing smoke-free zones. I know that there's some controversy about that not being used.
I'll just say, the State Parks Department put out a regulation which would ban smoking in state parks. There's been a challenge to that regulation because you can't just put out a regulation. There has to be a process, and the process for regulations have to allow for a comment period. And there's a theory that the comment period was not sufficiently conducted, so the Parks Department has reopened the comment period. We're now in the comment period. It's 45 days or so. And once the comment period is closed, the state will be issuing a regulation. But it's a procedural issue because there was a procedural challenge to the state's rule-making process. And that's what this is.
Are those ads just going to be for New York? In New York? I think that's what Ken said.
Ken, where did we say the ads are going to run? What were the numbers on the ads?
They are going to run locally, but also in neighboring states and in Canada.
Why not try to make it more of a broader?
Well, you know, actually on the digital campaign, needless to say, things that all of the digital campaign goes global instantly by the nature of the internet. So you have a combination of the two, you know, the paid media.
For the summer traveler, they're driving to New York State, and therefore we basically are looking for a target audience that's within a 5 to 6 hour drive of New York State. So what we've done is we've taken all of those areas immediately surrounding the state, and we're advertising in those states and within the New York City area, which is actually a major supplier of visitors to upstate New York.
I wanted to go back to the smoking question for a moment. Do you think that that's going to make a difference in parks? It's something that you obviously wanted to see smoking banned there. Is it going to make a difference in people's experience because now smoking is going to be allowed, I guess, for several more months?
Well, it's the opposite, Karen, I think. Smoking is currently allowed.
Yes.
You can smoke in a state park today.
And do you think that's a good idea?
No, that's why the state is proposing a regulation that would say you can't smoke in the state park. But there was a legal challenge to the way the state did the regulation. The state therefore said they'll go through a comment period, an additional comment period, to cure any possible legal question, which is about 40 days, I think, 45 days.
I understand. I just wanted
Well, they've been smoking in state parks forever, so it's going to be another 40 days. But compared to 40 years, I don't think it's a significant issue.
And Rose Harvey reported attendance was up remarkably last year.
Legislators sometimes, every year, they call for a gas tax holiday, and this fellow mentioned that it's within 5 or 6 driving hours. Any thoughts on a gas tax holiday?
Rick, it would be a nice idea. The question is, where would the money come from? And as you know, the repeated chorus in this room is we don't have any money. So a lot of ideas that we would like to do if we had funding, which we don't have.
Will this program eliminate the book that's put out by the I Love New York program detailing where people can go?
Betty, I don't believe this eliminates anything. I think this is in addition. We're trying to make our tourism efforts more robust. At one time, the state had a very aggressive tourism campaign. As you were hearing from David, in some ways we established the mark in tourism campaigns back in the 70s and the 80s. The state invested a lot of money in it. I think it paid dividends for the state. That then dwindled as everything dwindled in the state, it seems, the competence, the performance, et cetera. So this is in addition to what the state was doing. It's not supplanting anything, it's in addition to.
Will there be similar campaigns for fall and winter tourism seasons?
There will be an additional winter campaign, I believe, right? You know, Ken or David?
Yeah, in fact, those of you who did the math carefully as I went through the budget will realize that we haven't spent the full $5 million the governor has allocated to this so that we can do additional seasonal campaigns in the future.
Governor, can you talk about why there was funding made available this year for the War of 1812 to commemorate that as opposed to prior years where the commission was vetoed? $450,000 set aside this year. Council of Humanities.
Why, besides the I'm not familiar with the thinking of the past years. Obviously, I wasn't here, so I can't speak to the past years.
It's important enough for you to put the funding towards it though this year.
Yeah, and I think it's the same basic theory, right? My guess is in the past, if I had to speculate, I would say it was a budgetary issue. That, we just didn't have the money.
Progress on the I-STOP negotiations or anything on this? The Innocence Project is trying to push to re-include some provisions taken out of the DNA database law. Any movement on either of those?
Just 1 second, Mike, please. Any other questions on this topic?
Ken, just to clarify, so are we buying the airtime in like Philadelphia, Boston, or are we leading over from?
No, we are buying airtime in those markets, right, Harvey?
Albany, Schenectady, Troy, Binghamton, Buffalo, Elmira, New York, Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Watertown, Burlington, Plattsburgh, Cleveland, Hartford, New Haven, Philadelphia, Toronto, and Montreal.
And how much is the total?
The total is about $2.5 million for the broadcast portion of this particular buy. A little less than that.
For a winter campaign would be how much?
Well, we'll have another $1.5 million, $2 million or whatever left over to have more campaigns. And as David said, what we love about the campaign is it really is transferable for any individual region or any individual season. You just put in the kind of icons that work for that region or that season.
So can you characterize what the $2.5 million buy, just since you're talking about some pretty big differences in the media markets there?
Tom, it's about 7 weeks again. It's going to be pretty serious saturation in those markets. And as Harvey points out, it's really a focus on the drive-to market.
The essence entirely future just regular normal people, or are there any celebrities like Messi Yankees featured in any?
This is it, Glenn. These are the ads.
Was there any thought to have the governor in the end? We used to see Governor Pataki a lot in the I Love New York ads.
That's against the law. That's against the law now. I tried to be.
Not that I wouldn't have been a significant attraction.
Sorry.
I believe it would have boosted tourism 40% right there.
We can show you that 7 weeks. Our target's going to see these.
Governor,
The Saratoga racetrack. Is there any update on the NYRA situation?
Not beyond what we've spoken about the past couple of weeks, no.
Governor, the ads seem to focus primarily on upstate. I didn't see too many references to New York City or anything like that. Was there a concerted effort to focus on some of the upstate attractions with this ad campaign?
Not that I know of, Nick, and I don't know that that's accurate either.
Well, the summer travel season really is pretty much an upstate and Long Island season. Traditionally, the travel season for New York City, the big season that I Love New York has promoted, has been the winter time. So the summer area is really an outdoor recreational kind of activity, and that's pretty much upstate New York.
Governor, has there been any change in the signs for the historic sites or the signs that are on the Northway?
No, Betty. That is, we're going to be doing a conference on that this summer, and that will, it's interesting you bring that up, that will fit into this general theme, right? When we talk about New York open for business, this advertising campaign is part of it. Part of it will be the signage, the pathways through history, we call it. There's a great story of the history in the state of New York and historic sites in the state of New York that should be visited and celebrated that people just aren't aware of. So we're going to do a signage campaign on the New York State roads, the Thruway primarily, that will be highlighting the historic attractions across the state. And that will be another facet of this same general message. We'll have a conference, when is the conference? This July on that, and we'll be going forward with that right after the conference. But we're bringing the regions from across the state to ask them what ideas they have on highlighting the historic sites in their regions.
What about the advertising signs that are on the Northway? In other words, Edith Joe's or whatever it is, Sunoco Station coming up.
I will be on those signs, yes, saying eat at Joe's. There is no law that stops that. Do we know anything about those signs? Howard, do we know anything about those?
I'm not sure what your question is about the Northway signs.
There are signs on the Northway which say Sunoco Station, a half a mile, a restaurant so far, take a right here, Betty's Antiques at Walton Spot, something like that. But they're all the way up to Tampa.
Right. So
Both sides.
and the question is
And
what?
people pay for those.
Right.
The individuals pay for those. So where does that money go, and are you going to keep that up?
I think that's DOT money, but we'll get you an answer.
Governor, there's talk of the Thruway raising tolls because of operational budget challenges. It would seem a toll increase would work at cross purposes for promoting tourism. Do you have a position on the toll increase?
You know, I would like to see the specifics, but obviously any increases we would have to do, if you had to do an increase, you would want to do it in a way that minimized any impact on tourism to the extent that's possible.
There's a poll out today that showed you with I think about 70% approval rating, which is apparently the biggest for a governor since post 9/11 when people were all rallying around the leaders. There hasn't been any event like that. I was wondering what you attribute such a high rating to.
My increase in the poll? I attribute it to the video that I did for the LCA show. I think that the response to that video was tremendous and directly proportionate to the increase in the poll.
It's on YouTube, right?
Yes. Which argues for me being on these ads once again. No, to the extent I don't know. Obviously, I'm flattered by the increase, but as I've said before, you take all of these things with a grain of salt, the up and the downs. But to the extent the people of the state feel good about the product that they're getting from state government in Albany, that's the point of the entire exercise, right? And to the extent that people feel good about the direction of the state and the trajectory of the state of New York, that's not just an affirmation of the government, it's also very healthy for the state body politic. When people feel good about the state, people invest in the state. When people feel good about the trajectory of the state, that's when they buy a new house. That's when they put on an addition on the home. That's when they go out and buy things. So the correlation between their feelings about the trajectory of the state, consumer confidence, these are all related. So it's not just a political aspect. It's nice to have the affirmation, but it's actually more profound than that, and it's beneficial for the state as a whole.
Governor, in light of revelations, recent ones about Jacob, do you still have full faith in the organization to carry out its mission, and at what point do you think that the public's trust
Okay, are there no more on-topic questions for any of our friends here?
I know the original I Heart New York merchandise, like t-shirts, is really popular. Are there any plans for an updated merchandise campaign?
On the I Love New York, any thought for that, David, Ken?
Well, we continually try to raise money through licensing fees of different areas, and we work with different companies, and that's a continuing effort, and we get now about $3 million in revenue based on the merchandising of I Love New York, and we're constantly in talks with different companies and distributors to try to get more money for that.
Anything else on topic? Okay, this is off topic. Mike, let's go back to your question. Was
The drug deal, is there anything new on ISTOP and the Innocence Project is trying to push for, try to re-include some of the elements taken out of the DNA database? Are you open to that?
We are working on a number of aspects on the prescription drug bill. There are differences between the Senate and the Assembly that we've been trying to work through. There are some ideas that we have that we think would be beneficial also. And those conversations are active and they're ongoing, Mike. I'd be cautiously optimistic, but that I think that we could get something done this session. Cautiously optimistic, let me say that, on the prescription drug bill. On the Innocence Project, I haven't seen their latest proposals.
Governor, the Nassau County Executive is seeking help in the state.
I'm sorry, yes, Zach, your question was?
Jacob, in light of recent revelations, do you still have full faith in the organization to carry out its mission, and at what point do you think the public trust starts to erode?
Well, there are different questions there. On Jacob, I am fully confident in the goal of Jacob and the improvement in ethics overall and an institution of ethical reform. That was the right initiative last year. I feel good about what we accomplished. To the extent we have more work to do, we will do it. And Zach, I am sure we will have more work to do. You know, this is a very complicated undertaking. And we were trying to accomplish a lot of things with Jacob. Ethical reform, but you have to protect the privacy of people who might be accused of something, but nothing has been proven. You have a political balance. You had an institutional balance between the executive and the legislature. So this is a very, very complicated undertaking. And I am sure there'll be work to do to perfect the initial undertaking. And I believe that's going to be an ongoing process. I can see already certain changes that have to be made. The constant dialogue that is coming from the Commission, I find troubling. So, and I am open to changes, reforms, improvements on JCOPE this year, and I'm sure there'll be reforms to make next year and the year after and the year after and the year after. You know, these things are usually a work in progress. But the intent was exactly right, Zach.
I'm going to follow up on that question. Specifically, obviously your pick for the chair of the commission is under investigation and ethical questions about her. Are you troubled by that?
You know, first, if you had to pick, if you're dealing with, in the abstract, who should you pick as the head of JCOPE? I don't think you could have been any more ambitious than saying a sitting district attorney as the head of JCOPE. I mean, who knows better? You want to send a signal that you're serious about this effort. A sitting district attorney. That says serious. And you just used some words, Eric, and this is one of the reasons why the privacy of the JCOPE process is important. There are ethical questions raised and the person is under investigation. You know, that creates a whole ether of suspicion about a person, you know. So you have to be very careful what statements you make about a person, what becomes public, because you can damage a reputation. without proving a fact, right? And that's not what the system is supposed to do. In specific reference to Westchester District Attorney Janet DeFiore, your paper has said that a county employee has made certain allegations. I don't know that there is an investigation underway. Your paper also suggests that there was a lot of political overtones to what's going on. So I'll leave that to Westchester County to sort out, and I'll stay out of the county's process and stay out of the local politics. But I think the chairperson, having a sitting district attorney, and in particular Janet DeFiore, the Westchester County District Attorney, I have total confidence in that decision.
Governor, have you had any conversations with her since these allegations were made?
No.
Governor, the Nassau County Executive is seeking help to pay some upcoming property tax refund bills, and to do so he's seeking state approval to not have to rely on a supermajority of the county legislature to borrow money. What's your position? Would you support that request at all?
You know, Yancy, I have not seen it or heard it specifically. You would need to have state legislation. Obviously, just your question, 100 question marks popped up over your head when you were just saying it, Well, supermajority, in theory, Nassau County has financial issues, and there's a what's called NIFA, Financial Supervisory Agency, that is in place. They should be working together on these issues. That's the theory, that's the concept here. That's what I would like to see happen. Bypassing NIFA, bypassing the county legislature, obviously raises all sorts of questions. More debt raises all sorts of questions.
Governor, in the past you have supported microstamping legislation. Do you see any chances for an agreement on that before the end of session? And in a follow-up, do you think that the ESD should continue to provide aid to state gun manufacturers who oppose microstamping legislation?
I support microstamping. I do. I would like to see a microstamping bill passed. I am not optimistic that it will pass. There is a disconnect between things I support, what I would like to see happen, and what actually happens. I support minimum wage. I don't believe that bill is going to pass this year. Might, but I'm not optimistic. I support microstamping. I don't believe that bill is going to pass this year. It might, but I'm not optimistic. Microstamping is not the law of the state. It is my political position. I don't think ESDC should be in a position of funding or not funding based on my political position on microstamping.
Governor Cuomo, could you update us on how things are going on the NIRA legislation, and do you have any intent on clarifying that bill, whether NIRA would be subject to the open meetings law?
Running full speed ahead on the NIRA. We have to get a bill passed. We have to make appointments. I don't know where we are in specific conversations with the Assembly and the Senate on what the bill looks at. We're in conceptual agreement. We announced the conceptual agreement. But beyond that, Jim, I haven't had any further conversations.
Last question. Governor, just get back to the J-Code issue. Do you feel that Janet DeFiore was properly vetted before you put her as a chairman of the J-Code?
What else could you have possibly done, Nick? She's an elected district attorney of Westchester County, head of the District Attorneys Association for the state of New York, with an impeccable reputation. And this accusation that Eric is making is, in his paper, it's clear that there's some political contortions to all of this.
Governor, your concerns on J-Code, do any of those include, would you like to see a lifting of some of the secrecy, some of the things as basic as the vote on choosing executive director? And does that secrecy, do you think, lead to a potential double standard where someone, say a reporter, is being investigated and that could be out there, but a politician wouldn't be, in fact, protected by a misdemeanor charge?
Why? How can that be that you could investigate, there's a double standard between a reporter and a politician?
I've seen prosecutors, including some past attorneys generals, who have made accusations, laid out a case, and it was well known who was being investigated. Under JACO, the board members face a misdemeanor if they were to release something about the investigation. And again, overall, the secrecy, even votes as simple as hiring someone, have been
Well, look, Mike, there is a balance in all of this, you know. You can say on one hand, well, the more disclosure, the better. Just transparency, everything is an open...
Well, actually, no one's saying that. I think it agrees that there's a balance to be struck. I'm wondering, do you think the balance is adequate now, or is that one of the concerns that you have?
No, I don't think that the balance is adequate because I think there's a running commentary that has been coming from the JACOB Commission. And it was not supposed to be a running commentary. There was supposed to be a process that protected an individual's right to privacy. An individual has a right to privacy. An individual has a right to their reputation, that their reputation should not be publicly besmirched without facts, because it's very hard to get that back, you know. The old expression was the indictment is on page 1 of the newspaper, right? And the exoneration is on page 13. A person doesn't get that back. So don't be casual with a person's reputation. You know, everyone's protective of their reputation. So that's, on the other hand, I understand also disclosure, transparency. How do you balance that? So that's, and this is a, you know, Mike, this is a calibration that also changes over time, I think. It depends on where you are. Sometimes society says we'll sacrifice a little privacy for a little more disclosure. Sometimes they go the other way, depending on where they are, right? In the post-Watergate cycle, we went the other way. But the quote-unquote secrecy of JACOB was just to say, just because a person gets a letter. I mean, look at where we are now, according to the law. A letter is sent, and a letter automatically triggers an investigation from anyone. Anyone can write a letter, and that letter automatically triggers an investigation. And that person who sent the letter to the agency can go have a press conference and can say, I know Mike Gormley's under investigation. How do you know that? I know he's under investigation by JACOB. Go ask Gormley, are you under investigation? Microphone in Mike Gormley's face. Are you under investigation? No comment. Well, now you're dead. Well, second answer. Well, I'm responding to an inquiry from JACOB. Ah, so you're under investigation. No, not really. I'm only responding to an inquiry. Well, we call that under investigation. And the only thing that has happened is some person wrote a letter. What we realized recently is the person who wrote the letter can be in the middle of a political campaign with the person.
Wouldn't release of that letter and then comment by JACOB help clarify all of that for the public? Wouldn't disclosure in this situation help get closer to the truth?
Mike, you saw the headlines. This person's under investigation. Front page. Front page. 7th graph. The person who wrote the letter was considering a political race against the person. I don't think that's the best we can do.
How do you reconcile that? The idea of for anybody to stand up and file a complaint, then the person has to respond, and then the flip side of that is JACOB will ultimately decide on whether they're going to do an investigation, but its result won't necessarily be public if it decides to do nothing.
Joe, we face that conundrum everywhere today. I was Attorney General. During the election season, I would get dozens of complaint letters from the opponent of whatever office they're running under. Dozens. I have information that Joe Spector is actually stealing money and he has an account under his pillow if you go look. Dozens of letters. DAs, the AG, U.S. attorneys have discretion. Just because they get a letter doesn't mean they automatically do something. They have discretion. You can send the letter, you send the complaint, but then the U.S. Attorney looks at the letter, the DA looks at the letter, the AG looks at the letter, U.S. Justice Department looks at the letter, and they decide if it's credible. And if it's credible and they believe it's credible, then they take actions, normally private actions first, they get some information. If they think it's not credible, they don't pursue it. None of that is public. That's 99.9% of the way these situations are handled. If it turns out to be credible and real, then it becomes public down the road. J-Cope is the aberration from every other situation. So, as I said, these are difficult issues. They're complex. You're trying to balance a lot of things. We came up with a piece of legislation last year that was highly negotiated, let's call it. And I think we have more work to do. And I think that's to be expected, and I think that's true, and that's fine. You know, a lot of the things that we're doing here are all first-time efforts. We're working through the regional councils on economic development. You know, when you start and you try and you experiment and you perfect as you go along. A lot of the changes we're making in agencies, first time ever. You change, you experiment, and as you go along. I think J-Cope is much the same. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that, right? When you try to tackle complex issues, don't be surprised when your solution isn't perfect.
Governor, you marched in a parade the other day with Secretary Clinton. What did you talk about as you were marching?
New York Times? You? It's all about you. Your coverage. No, just you.
Last question. Governor, there's this dispute between NYRA and its former ethics council over a report that they wrote and provided to the board. Have you seen this report? Are you familiar with its contents, and do you think it should be made public?
You know, Bill, I saw the article in the paper, but I know nothing about it. I haven't seen the report, and I know nothing other than what I read in the paper.
Governor, are you aware that NYRA is having a press party to celebrate Belmont, and it will be at the Garden State Inn?
No, I wasn't invited. I don't know if I should take a personal affront.
Governor, based on what you do know about this report, do you think it should be made public?
I know nothing about it, Bill. I know that there is the person who wrote the report wants it made public. That's all I know. Well, let me just answer Mr. Kaplan fully. But there was a topic besides you, but I'm not going to tell you what it was. No, anyway, I went to the Chappaqua Memorial Day Parade. Secretary Clinton was there. Former President Clinton was there. It was a pleasant surprise. I didn't know they were going to be there. I'd heard that it's the parade in their hometown. They often go. There was a question whether or not they were going to go. But it was a pleasant surprise. I had a delightful chat with the secretary. I had a delightful chat with the former president. I had worked under the Clinton administration. I was the Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. I was there for all 8 years. So it was great catching up. Nothing in particular. You know, we marched and we chatted, but there was no topic in particular.
So 2016 didn't come up.
Oh, was that what you were trying to ask? No.
They promised it.
Governor, to get back to the tourism discussion very quickly. Get back to the tourism discussion very quickly. Do you plan again on vacation in New York this summer?
Where else would I vacation, Nick? And you, Nick?
No, I don't go on vacation.
All right. Thank you.